It's a crazy time in the financial industry and really the world. I'm going to get into what's going on with the banking system and my thoughts on it, as well as just the facts. Before I do, though, make sure you do subscribe. Small YouTube channel, hoping to get to 500 subs. This tweet's by Finance a Lot, at Finance a Lot on Twitter. He's tweeting out a clip of Janet Yellen discussing what he believes is happening with the financial meltdown. He says they're intentionally causing a banking crisis so they could introduce a central bank digital currency with only the main banks left. If you are unaware of what is going on, several banks going under, taking on too risky of investments. I'm not going to get into too much of what is actually happening. If you don't know, just give it a quick Google. But banks are going under. The first one that really caused the uproar was the Silicon Valley Bank, which basically there was some rumblings of them having some financial troubles, and that caused a serious bank run. Customers wanting to pull funds from their accounts and being unable to because it's all loaned out or in other investments. So this was the response by our government.
Fed board and I, in consultation with the president, determined that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your plan?
That determination.
Right. So what is your plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
And bingo, that's exactly the right point. And you can argue whether or not you think that the bailout for the companies and the individuals who have more than the insured amount, if you are unaware, there's FDIC insurance, which basically covers in the case of a bank or some other sort of financial institution, if they are acting as a bank, if you have $250,000 of cash in an account, and the bank goes bust, they will cover that amount. Anything over that amount is not covered. Well, the government noticed that there was lots of panic going on, lots of businesses that were not going to be able to make payroll. They had millions of dollars, they have thousands of employees, and there's lots of money going in and out of these accounts, especially Silicon Valley Bank. Well, there's lots of startups where they raise a whole lot of money and they burn it, and not a whole lot of revenue coming in. If you lose access to these funds, you're not going to be able to make payroll. Lots of problems are going to happen. The government needed to look at this, and I'm not going to argue what the results should have been for people to lose their jobs, not get paid for work. That's obviously not good. Something probably did need to be done when the government comes out and says that they're going to fully insure the money at some banks because the economic impact would be so large if they didn't, and not insure above $250,000 other banks because the economic impact would not be that catastrophic. You're basically saying, small banks, goodbye, you're going to go out of business, because why on earth would anybody with a large amount of money ever put it into a small bank? There's no reason. The risk is not worth the reward. Lots of times, small regional banks offer very competitive products, which tends to make them slightly more risky. But the thought is, hey, if I have $10 million and I put it in the small bank and they're risky, and I have $10 million and I put in the big bank and they're less risky, I'm still insured for the same amount. That's up to the individual, the company, to make that decision. But when you say a big bank is going to cause more problems if it's not insured, you're making that decision for them. You're now saying, well, wait a minute, I could put $100 million in one bank and I'm going to get all my money if there's an issue and not the other. This is clearly centralizing all the banks. There's no reason why you would ever bank with a small bank if you have more than $250,000 to put in an account. And obviously it's not feasible to open up 10 million accounts. If you got $100 million, $10 million, a company, you can't do that. You got to be able to operate. There's clearly a sense of protecting the big guys, which can be justifiable in some ways, but it's going to lead to only a couple of banks that are going to be heavily regulated, and it's going to lead to a very uncompetitive marketplace where us, for the little guy, where we are just told what we can and can't do. There's no banks that can come in and disrupt, because why would anybody ever work with them? I've heard some other creators and some other people talking about this saying, well, we probably don't need as many banks. Who are you to decide if we don't need a million banks? Let the market decide. The more banks, the better. The more any types of business, the better. They're going to try to win business. That's what you want. And if they go out of business, they go out of business. That's what the free market is supposed to do. This is clearly an attempt to centralize the financial industry. I don't know the end goal. It could be the central bank digital currency. It could just be have more control over everybody's money. But everything is moving more towards that, some sort of a central currency. Whether you think it's conspiratorial or not, this is a move towards that. You can't argue that. You can say, well, what else were they going to do? I don't know exactly what else they were going to do. When you come out and say this, what do you expect people to do? These people that are making these decisions, there's no way they haven't thought this through. And you could say, oh, they're too dumb. They can't be this dumb, this consistent to keep moving towards this thought of a central banking system. It would be one thing if every single move, if it was kind of 50-50 or it tended to lean one way, but when it all goes one direction, you can't just say they're not competent enough to know what they are doing. If you think that that's a good thing, it's a good thing if the right people are running things. But as we all know, that rarely happens, and it could happen for a generation. It could happen for a short time, but eventually people get control that are bad. And when bad people get control, bad things happen. Our freedom as individuals gets reduced, and there's nothing we can do about it once it gets too far gone. At the end of the day, my takeaway, what I'm personally doing, just keeping myself aware. That's it. Knowing kind of what's going on, seeing that it's all moving in one direction, being prepared as best I can, knowing that I can't really do a whole lot about it, but at least I kind of know what's happening. Try to use this to your advantage in any way that you possibly can. For anybody who thinks that smaller government, smaller regulations, more freedom, more competition, this is bad. They're picking winners and losers. They're not doing it for the little guy, and it's very consistent in a lot of the policy decisions and the bailouts and the things that do happen is they seem to very much help the big companies. They say that it's to help the small people and the small companies because, hey, there's so many people at these banks that are going to be impacted, that which is correct, but they squash the small business by doing these things. Thanks for tuning in. Just another reminder to subscribe if it's your first time here. I'll see you in the next one.